was Thyra Thompson, and that was in one biennium ago. So the interior square footage maintained by trades, crews, and Cheyenne increased by 27%. So the new square footage includes new buildings like the combined labs facility, expanded square footage at Hirschler buildings, older buildings purchased for state like Capitol Hill and the Eidelman building. Trades has also increased its preventative maintenance work to better preserve the buildings and reduce costs to the state. So the department is requesting an additional journeyman electrician at a TDEL 8 and a new senior skilled trade specialist, also an 8, to serve as the lock shop supervisor. So that is our priority number 2. So our top 2 priorities are these positions. I know it's a significant ask. I did not do it lightly when I went to the governor, and I'm very happy with how he came out with the 3 positions instead of the 6.
Questions? All right, please proceed.
Great. Priority number 6, position transfer. The General Services Division, this is on page 77. General Services Division is requesting the permanent transfer of position from GSD to the State Library. This position was transferred back in August. The State Library can use its existing funding, general and federal fund. It is not requesting any funds transfer to GSD. This position assists with the State Library communications and managing external grant funds, including 13.2 million ARPA funds. So we're not asking for any appropriation. It's just a position switch.
Mr. Chairman,
Is this that same question of whether, who approves?
what's that?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The question that I would have is how this position has no funding associated with it. Because really, we only have a couple agencies that are allowed to have positions with no funding. And so trying to understand how this one is there with no funding.
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Walters, and I'm trying to remember that this is a position that in the past, prior to the new rule of 90%, you can't go below 90%. That hasn't happened yet. So I believe that's part of the issue. The other part is that GSD is going to keep the funding that was in that position. I don't believe it was funded up to 80%. It was funded less. So I had defunded a position back when we were allowed to. And that position is being switched over, but General Services is keeping that funding so that when we get a deputy under Andrew, which is what I talked about earlier today when retirement, that's how I'm trying to figure out how to fund that position without coming to the legislature, backing anybody into a corner, or trying to figure it out on my own. So that's the long and short of it. But the position is switching over to the library, and they have the funding to be able to make that position work for what they need. They just need the position.
And so there will be requests there for the funds for that position?
No, Chairman Nicholas, they have the funding through the federal funding that they have that
So
they
it's
can fill it.
federal, there's other funds.
Correct.
Okay. Please proceed.
So the next division is the Utilities Division. There's not an exception request, but again, that will be included in the inflation.
Okay, go ahead.
Human Services, we're on page,
Oh, wait,
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
could we back up to page 80, please?
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director. Thinking about how these position requests align with the Government Efficiencies Task Force recommendations. It looks like these are all supervisor positions. And so how does that complement what was outlined in that task force? And how many other staff will report to each of these supervisory positions? Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Sherwood, I believe you're talking about span of control? Okay. And I will have to look at that because I don't have that in my head right now, but I know that the key supervisor would supervise one, so that would be 1 over 1, but we'd only have one key person who makes keys. So When it comes to the TDST 13, they would be supervising quite a few. So let me get that for you, and I apologize. This is the second time I'm gonna have to get more information for you so that HRD can look at that and make sure that you have a good understanding of what that looks like.
Okay. Back to Human Services?
Back to Human Services. This is the NeoGov funding, exception request priority 5. And so what this is NeoGov is a system that we have always, well, we have used for quite a while on recruiting. The majority of states use this company, NeoGov. They are expanding into other areas. And so we went out for RFP after the efficiency study discussed that we needed an HRIS system. We knew pretty well that an HRIS system is millions and millions of dollars. And so what we tried to do is figure out a way to work something that would simulate an HRIS system. And what we found, we came up and we used to have Halogen as our performance management system. And when we went out for RFP, Halogen told us, you're going up a lot because you're on an old system. So it was going to be millions to even keep our performance system. So what the HRD administrator did was go out for RFP for all of these. And so when I say all of these, I mean kind of looking at performance, recruitment, learning module, onboarding. Forms is part of it too. So we went through that RFP process. NeoGov came in basically to do all of it for less than it was going to cost us to do Halogen, the performance. So in other words, if we were just going to have performance, it would have been more expensive just to have performance, and we wouldn't have all these other modules.
But it looks like NeoGov it's the same amount every year. Right? Says it's an ongoing exception request.
Yes, it is an ongoing exception request, but that you have to remember that we're not having the Halogen exception request every year as well. So for the past 10 years, when Governor Meade instituted the performance, if you remember that, if you were here, we absorbed that cost. So HRD has always absorbed this cost without asking for an appropriation, and now.
From where? Where'd you pay for it from?
Pardon me?
Where did you pay for it from?
We basically paid for it from scavenging from different areas in A&I. I can turn it over to the CFO for her to tell you how she finds this money. But that's basically what the issue was.
Did you find that money for us? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But on that subject, so Rory, it talks about we're going to decrease federal funds. Looks like we've been paying, if I'm on the right one, it looks like we're paying, and am I on the right one? We're on priority, are we on priority 7 or priority 6?
Priority 5.
Okay, 5. Okay, I'll get to priority 7 when we get there. Thank you.
So we're requesting the funding.
Sorry.
Okay.
And that funding, let's see. Sorry, I got distracted. Lost my train of thought.
So, I mean, the simple, big question is with NeoGov, we're going to be saving how much? And we get the same quality or data that you want.
We are going to get essentially an HRIS system that works with the auditor's office and is currently working with the auditor's office with onboarding, recruitment, learning, the learning module, forms to make the forms consistent throughout the enterprise. Essentially for $821,000 in additional ongoing funding. So
And how much was the HMRS if we would stay with that?
we didn't have an HRIS system. I'm sorry, Chairman Nicholas, we didn't have an HRIS system. It's essentially all done by hand. And that's part of the issue, is that we are going to be able to be a little more efficient with this
Just a little?
system. Yeah, hopefully a lot. We've seen a
$1 million
lot.
worth of it.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing biennial cost. However, if we were to stay with just the Perform with Halogen and NeoGov, how we have it now, that would have been a higher number
Okay,
instead of switching to NeoGov. So we were trying to figure out a way to reduce the costs and the amount of money they were requesting from the Halogen, and it's called Saba now. Or Cornerstone, I think it's called Cornerstone, was going to be significant. So, I'm sorry, yes, sorry about that. So it is we did go out for RFP. We had a good interest in it. NeoGov obviously gave us the best bang for our buck, and that's where we came up with the 800,000 appropriation that we'll need to continue forward.
Go ahead. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, just for purposes of comparison, what's the average annual cost relative to having the, the NeoGov versus not having? Another way to ask that is, what's the net benefit of getting NeoGov?
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Henderson, let me get back with you with the actual numbers for that. I probably have them in front of me, but I would have to do some math, and it's not good for me to have to do math in this situation, so I will get that back to you. The performance LMS that NeoGov came with the RFP was approximately $450,000. When you look at the rest, 2.2 million, 1 million, 1 million, it was significant if we were going to try to go that route with more of an IRS or HRIS system, but I will get you that information.
So committee, my inclination is to continue and see if we can't get through the division, through the
Yes.
agency before 12:30. So,
We're very close.
okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Priority number 7, funding switch again. The Human Resource Division is requesting to switch the funding for the following positions to 100% generally funded. These positions came into HRD from the Department of Health through centralization. That was one of the hiccups we had, and Director Hibbert helped us figure out a way to get the health positions that are federally funded. They can work on other things and not just health. So we had a direct bill for a little while, and now we want to be able to get that through the SWICAP. So switch it to general fund and go through the SWICAP process. 657,522. And that's also net to zero. Priority number 10, YDOT travel funding. This is the last and final request related to HR centralization. So you shouldn't see anything more on switching things around. When we did the HRD centralization, YDOT, the transfer didn't happen from the commission travel funds.
Okay.
So we are doing that switch as well, and that was $50,000 for travel.
Distance learning?
SWICAM.
Hmm.
Yeah. Priority 12, 400 series funding. This exception request is to correct an error in the director's office, 400 series budget from the current biennium. This is a negative exception from priority 12 on page 29 that you heard about earlier for $7,619.
Okay.
Nothing in distance learning, nothing in admin services, employee group insurance, no change, there's no exception request there. Health insurance, no exception request. There
Any
are,
questions on health insurance or group insurance? Okay, go ahead.
okay, so, priority number 13, dental insurance spending authority. This is a request to increase the spending authority for, the standard budget on dental claims. Goshen County and the city of Laramie are new participants in the program. Due to the addition to the program, we anticipated some adjustments there.
Good.
Section 4, we're on page 114. I'm sorry, I'm going quick. Priority number 14, voluntary insurance spending authority. This is all borne by the employee for voluntary, so this is just spending authority as well. Due to the uptick in enrollment in voluntary benefits with the addition of Goshen County and City of Laramie, they're requesting an increase in spending of 2.5 million. That's not an
Okay.
appropriation, it's just spending authority. And then employees group insurance, flex benefit, nothing is there. We are now at economic analysis, page 121. This
There?
is priority 8, price increase. These are the pricers that go out in the city, towns, and counties for the Economic Analysis Division. They survey 27 cities and towns. EAD employees do Cheyenne for the cost of living index. So essentially what this is a $150 increase per city per year, per town per year. And the average increases, it works out to about 21%. So I believe we pay between $325 to $375 per town. So we're upping that by $150. And that is a total of $8,100 general fund. And that would be ongoing.
Okay.
Priority number 6, another funding split, position transfer. This is the state libraries requesting the permanent transfer that we discussed above from GSD. So this is the
The other
one, yes. State library, no exception request under the library trust fund. However, under the federal funds, position transfer and funding split again. That's the same position and making sure that that all works out. If you have any questions there, that's $166,898. Library federal funds increase. This is a B11 reduction. So the state library is requesting an increase to federal fund spending authority to match the annual library services and technology federal grant. Prior to this, the B11 process was used to adjust the spending authority, and this just makes everything a little bit easier. $1,162,068 federal funds. Thank you very much.
Oh, any other questions?
That was quick.
For Trish.
Apologize for that.
Don?
Mr. Chairman, on Tuesday, the committee asked staff to remind them of the issue with the state auditor's office. They were in the position where they are going to have to defund a position in order to pay the salary increases going forward, not going back. And there was the question posed of what is the threshold amount for percent funding for positions in the step 3 portion of the compensation increase. So bringing vacant positions up to 90% of MPP applies to all positions that are 50% funded, 45% funded, 75% funded, and that will advise you.
So it's 45% of 90?
Yeah,
Chairman Nicholas, it's all vacant positions. So if they're 30% funded, 90 or 89% funded, they're bringing them all up to 90. That was where we had changed that you're no longer allowed to defund. We're going to fix it for now, and you're no longer allowed to defund past 90.
I want to clarify, so the conversation was is they want to increase funding on 2 positions, and they thought the question, and they were going to use a position that was partially funded around 50%. And so we said, well, do you not want to keep that? And they says, well, we don't think it's going to be funded up to the full percent because it's only 50%. We would prefer to keep it, but if we can't, then we'll take that money to enhance these other 2. And so what you're telling me is all those positions in the step 3 will get funded up.
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Larson, unless Kevin says otherwise, that is my understanding.
Mr. Chairman, this is true, and we work with the state auditor's office to give them their B1 sheets, which are reflective of where they currently are on those positions. And I believe that either in hand with the state budget department and ANI and the SAO, you will get those statistics on those positions that they discussed. But we do intend to have a conversation about the Section 310D Remember, Section 310D does not have an appropriation in it, but it does push you into the appropriation, which we want to address. And corrections, we have a different methodology. Corrections has overtime, and basically, if you can figure out a way to compensate corrections and avoid overtime, you can solve that issue without extensive appropriations.
So, Mr. Chairman and Kevin, I think really what we were trying to ascertain is just what you're going to do, because we was going to make a recommendation whether to fund an appropriation to increase those two positions and leave the one alone, or what to do with it. So we were just looking for clarification on that, and that helps us.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, it is hand in hand. It goes in increments of, yes, we are going to facilitate the 90% on the vacant positions. And we know what the short is on the positions that the auditor's office had discussed with you. And then there was an offer on the table, the auditor's office provide the Joint Appropriations Committee the statistics on those two positions, and you would consider that.
So does that answer the question, Don, for us?
Mr. Chairman, I'm taking the response to be all positions, and there are a lot. There are 5 in your agency, I believe. There's 59 in the Department of Health that are at 0.
Mr. Chairman, when we went through the process, and there was a time where we held all transactions in place, we did that so that we could identify exactly what the number was on all the positions, do the compensation correctly as is appropriated. And that document that we have with A&I and the State Budget Department at that snapshot of time, which was 6/23 of June, tells us here's the vacant positions and here's the distance from 90% on all those vacant positions. The only caveat is that there's an advantage for us to work on corrections in a fashion. But that document is what I was speaking of this morning. We know exactly what the distance between those positions in the enterprise are and 90% on the vacant positions. And that's currently in the profile.
Mr. Chairman, if I may indulge Director Bach just for a moment to just walk me through an example so I understand, and this may relate to the prior agency as well. If on January 1st, 2024, an agency director wants to fill a vacancy, and let's imagine that right now the funding is at 80% of MPP for that vacancy. Under our Section 310D, we've got an $8 million pot of money to bring it up to 90% of MPP. Okay. And if the agency director says, no, I want to hire that person on January 1st, 2024 at 100% of MPP, what is the director supposed to do to get the extra 10%? Or can they at all even do it?
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Stiff, a director has the authority to hire to MPP. Doesn't mean they can, because they don't have the funding for it. If they have the funding for it, they can. So say, for example, the person who left that position, and that's why they're hiring, say it's vacant because somebody who had worked there for 10 years left. That position might be budgeted at 105% of MPP or at MPP. But if it's budgeted at 90, they're at 90 until they can figure out a way, like I'm trying to figure out a way to get a deputy in GSD because they need the additional help. You can no longer defund a position like we have in the past. That was allowed, just to be clear, that was allowed to do because directors were struggling to hire positions or change a position or reclass a position. But if it is a 90% position, and that's how much is in that position, that's what you're required to hire. That's what I have to hire. Unless there's a way that another position was, you know, somebody who's worked here for 40 years and it's maybe 102% of market on another position. You could take some of that money, as long as it doesn't go down past 90%, and put it in that position. that's what you are able to do on your own.
Thank you very much. That helps.
Sure.
Sam Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Totally new topic for you here. What is your agency's remote work policy? How many folks do you have taking advantage of it, percentage or number? And then do you have folks that are living, working out of Wyoming in a remote fashion?
Chairman Nicholas, Representative Walters, we have a very robust telework policy in ANI. Now, that does not mean that we have a lot of folks who cannot telework. GSD is a good example. But I have somebody sitting here who is permanently teleworking and her entire staff is permanently teleworking. So we have a pretty robust policy. I believe we have one person out of state right now. And that was a situation where there was a medical issue and she had to go home to have help with a family member. And so we have one person out of state. We have had discussions on the job workforce team that we don't want to see. And if you are going to go out of state, let us know. We'll tell you what that state looks like for out-of-state telework. So that's where we are right now. If an agency finds a unicorn, is what we say, somebody who is perfect, but they live in California, there's a lot of discussion that has to be had before we're able to do that, because there's a lot of different laws. The laws are the problem. The auditor is working right now on taxes. We have a committee right now that we've been working on, but each director has the ability to determine what their level of telework is. Does that answer your question? We have quite a few. We have a lot of HR folks that are teleworking. Like I said, our entire accounting department, and that's working very well. In fact, I have Rory working on the how to supervise teleworkers. She's part of that team.
When you say a lot, can you give us an estimate?
I would say 100% in accounting. I would say director's office is quite a bit less. It's, intermittent. So there's not a full-time teleworker in the director's office. We have, oh, we do have one, sorry. We have our one person who does most of the computer work from home. So one person in the director's office. And then I would say HRD has intermittent and full-time telework, probably around 20%. And I can get those numbers from ANI, and it's all determined on the telework policy, but every agency, an agency can say, I don't like telework, I don't want anybody to telework ever, and they're able to do that.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, Trish. Appreciate it
Thanks.
very much. So it is 12:26. We will be back at roughly 1:30-ish. Don?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you will catch up quickly, so don't worry about the immediate agenda. There are only 8 of the almost 40 boards that have an exception request, and all of them except one have one exception request. So it'll be very quick after lunch.
So by the way, tomorrow, Friday, I'm going to recommend that we work through lunch. So the folks that want to head, we can try to be done earlier. So just keep that in mind. And if there are things that we can catch up, if we get done early today, we could, and if we have someone we can swing over this tomorrow if we need to. Just keep that in mind. Okay.